Hello friends, I am Professor Nisar Ahmed Khan from Department of Economics, Aligarh Muslim University. The topic of my lecture is Introduction to Econometrics. In this lecture, I'll talk about what is econometrics, how is it related to statistics and mathematics, as well as economics. What is its subject matter? What is its importance? And why is there need of a separate subject like econometrics? Further, we will also be talking about the methodology of econometrics, that is, how do we conduct an econometric study. And after discussing this, we will also talk about that the component of econometrics, that is, what are different ways of dividing the econometrics into subgroups. Now let's start with what is econometrics. Econometrics is derived from two Greek words, oikonomia and metron. Oikonomia means economics and metron means measure. So literally, econometrics means economic measurement. Economics is a science of relationship between and among economic variables. It's very, very important to find out the nature of this relationship, rather exact nature of this relationship. Unless we find out the exact nature of this relationship, we cannot analyze the behavior of one variable given the other variable. We cannot make any prediction, we cannot make any forecasting. So therefore, measurement in economics is very, very important. Without measuring this relationship, we cannot analyze it, we cannot make forecasting, we cannot make prediction. We'll move to definition, the formal definition of economics. The formal definition of economics given by Econometric Society and American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language. The definition is almost saying that economics, we have application of mathematics and statistics, that the tools which are available in statistics and mathematics are redesigned to suit for the study of the problems in economics. That is, some modifications are made in the statistical and mathematical tools to make it applicable in the field of economics. So, we can say that econometrics is nothing but it is simply the combination of three subjects. One is economics, another is mathematics, and another is statistics. Economics means that it is a branch of economics that we have already told you that it is a branch of economics which combined, these three: economic theory, statistics, mathematics, and economic theory with statistics and mathematics. What are the uses of econometrics? What are the uses of econometrics? What type of uses it is put through? The first one is that in econometrics, we test the economic theory, because economic theories are given without making any empirical studies. That is, the economic theories are totally based on observations of the actual happening and on the basis of these actual happenings, the theories are given. Now, with the data and with the econometric tools, we can test that how far the conclusion drawn from economic theory are true, are correct. So that is the first task, that is testing of economic theories or testing the hypothesis related to or drawn from economic theory. Then we can also use econometrics to analyze an economic phenomena, and we can also evaluate the impact of economic policy. We can also predict the future values of these economic variables, that is, what given the income in coming years, what will be the consumption, what will be the investment, what will be the saving, or like that we can make predictions on the basis of our estimation that we have carried out. Then we can also study the relationship between and among micro and macroeconomic variables, that is, how are they related to each other. We can also understand the dynamics of financial market. Financial market is such a market where changes are taking place, in every moment, and things change very, very quickly. So we must have a good data bank and good tools to make prediction and forecasting and to analyze various phenomena. Then in private and public sector, the decision making can also be made on the basis of econometric studies. Now we come to the methodology of econometrics. That is, how do we carry an econometric study? But before we talk about the methodology of econometrics, we would like to talk about the relationship of economics with statistics and mathematics in little detail. In mathematics, the relationship is expressed in exact form. In statistics, we have economic statistics. Economic statistics means that is gathering data and presenting the same in the form of chart, curves, and bar diagram. That is what we mean by economic statistics. Then we have theoretical statistics, and in theoretical statistics is concerned with measurement and drawing inferences. That once we have gathered the data regarding the economic variables, then we carry out estimation, we carry out measurement, carry out analysis, draw inferences, and make predictions and forecastings. Now, these statistical tools are the statistical tools designed for use in economics. These statistical tools cannot be applied unless economic theories are mathematized. Mathematics, we all know, is a language. We can express the things mathematically, and unless the economic theory is written in the language of mathematics, the statistical tools or econometric tools cannot be applied. So the first task is that this is economic theory, if it is already in the mathematical form, if it is already written in the language of mathematics, there is no need to rewrite it. But if it is not written in the language of mathematics, then we have to first write this economic theory in the language of mathematics, and that is what we call as mathematical economics. There is no difference between mathematical economics and economic theory. The only thing that these same economic theories are written in mathematical form. Now once it is written in mathematical form in the language of mathematics, then the statistical tools and econometric tools can easily be applied to economic theory for making useful for drawing useful inferences and for taking policy decisions and making predictions. Now let us let us find out as to how can we carry out an econometric study. What are different steps involved in an econometric study, and what are different stages through which we have to pass in order to conduct an econometric study. So let's have a look at that. The first step that is involved in any econometric study is we find out what do we want to study, whether we want to test an economic theory or on the basis of our experience we have observed certain phenomena, or on the basis of past studies we have something which we want to test, which we want to further study, which we want to verify with the help of empirical data. So the first thing that is involved in economic theory in the econometric study is what do we want to do. Suppose we want to test an economic theory. The economic theory is already there. Now that economic theory has to be formulated. That is known as formulation of the model. Formulation of the model means the first task is that the economic theory must be written in the language of mathematics. And once it is written in the language of mathematics, then the theory is formulated. But in the formulation of model, that is also known as specification of the model. We also call it as specification of the model. So first we find out, suppose we want to study the relationship between income and consumption. An economic theory says that consumption is a function of income. Consumption is a function of income. Now this function relationship we want to study. Now the first thing that we have to do, that we have to write this function relationship and we have to find its form of the relationship. How consumption is related to income? What is the relationship, whether it is a linear relationship or it is a non-linear relationship? So suppose we say that there is a linear relationship, and that linear relationship is like this. Now the question is, where from you get this information? That information we may get from economic theory. Economic theory may give some hint as to whether the relationship between consumption and income is a linear one or non-linear one. So we may get an hint. If you do not get any hint, then we may use the past studies or our own experience in order to know that what type of relationship is likely to be between consumption and income. Moreover, if you have made a wrong specification, there is always a chance to correct it in the light of the results that we are going to obtain. So that is the first thing, that you have to specify the exact functional form. That is, the exact functional form is that the linear relationship between consumption and income, that is the exact functional form that we have specified. Now once we have specified the functional form, then the second thing is that have a priori knowledge regarding the size and sign of the parameters. Now here in this relationship, alpha and beta are the parameters. That is, the relationship between consumption and income depends on the size and sign of alpha and beta. So do we have any information, priori information regarding the size and sign of these parameters? Whether the alpha, what will be the size of alpha, what should be the size of beta? Even if we have a range in which these values are likely to lie, that will also be useful. Even if you do not know the exact value, we know the range in which the values of these parameters are going to lie. that will also be very useful. So, the sign, that is whether the sign of beta will be positive, the sign of beta will be negative, that is all these informations, if these informations are available from economic theory, that is good. But even if you do not have these information, it will not make any difference, because we can find out these sign as well as the size of these parameters when we will carry out the estimation, and then the whatever information is available from economic theory, from the past studies, as well as we can use our own experience in order to know that how far uh, the size of the and sign of these parameters are reliable and correct. Moreover, there are other ways also to test that. We will come to that. Then once we have specified the model and we have found out the exact relationship between our variable, that is consumption and income, the next task is gathering data. Now in this relationship, before we talk about gathering data, consumption we know is a dependent variable and income is an independent variable. Now this relationship that we have expressed here, it is an exact relationship. It is a mathematical relationship. That is an exact relationship. This relationship simply says that consumption is affected by income. Now, that is based on the assumption that all other variables are constant. But if in econometrics we conduct the study as it is, we have no way to conduct a control experiment where all variables can be controlled. In sciences, we may have this luxury to control the variables which may affect a particular reaction, and that is possible in lab. But here in econometrics and in social sciences, we have to conduct the studies as they are, that is without having any control over the variables. So, we cannot assume here that other variables are constant, and therefore other variables may continuously be affecting this relationship. So, what we are going to do regarding this, the influence of other variable? So, we have another variable which is known as random disturbance terms or random variable, that is we have u. U takes into account the influence of all other variables which are not included in the model. That is, in the model, in fact, we have only one independent variable, that is income, which affects consumption. But as I told you that besides income, there are a host of other variables that may also affect consumption. So, the influence of all other variables are included in U. Plus, you also include the any error that we have conducted in gathering the data. That is, it has the measurement error, that is the error that we have conducting, we have the error that we have committed for finding the values of consumption and income, or for collecting the data regarding consumption and income, measurement error, and error that we might have committed in specifying the model, that is known as a specification error. So, the measurement error and specification errors, the impact of these two are also included in U. So, it is assumed that U is a random variable, and a random variable is a variable which takes its value by chance. So, in the case of random variable, we have the values of the variable along with their probability. That is the case with all random variables, and same is the case with U as well. Now, once we have formulated the model, the next task is gathering the data. We have to collect data regarding our independent variable and the dependent variable. Now, this is our example. In our example, we have only two variables, that one dependent variable and one independent variable. But we may have other type of models in which there may be several independent variables that we call as multiple regression. that is more than one independent variable. So if there are more than one independent variables, then we have to collect data regarding all independent variable as well as the dependent variable. But here, to start with, we have a very simple model in which there are only two variables, consumption and income. So we have to collect data regarding consumption and income. Now, the question is what type of data we are going to collect. Whether we are going to have the time series data, or we are going to have a cross-section data, or we are going to have a pool data, or we are going to have a panel data. A time series data, here the values of the variable are expressed over time with respect to time. That time may be year expressed in years, the time may be expressed in months, the time may be expressed in quarters, maybe in weeks or days, whatever it is. And in case of cross-section data, we try to find out the values of the variable at a point of time. That is not over a period of time, but at a point of time. So that is what we call as cross-section data. Then pool data is that we are going to pool the time series data and cross-section data, and that is what we call as pool data. So the other type of data is known as panel data. Panel data means that repeated cross-section data, that is the same experience, the same survey of the same set of people we conduct again and again, or we can say panels data is a time series of cross-sectional data. That is, if you have conducted a survey regarding the people's consumption and income this year, then next year again we will approach the same type of people and again conduct the survey regarding their consumption and income. Again next year we will conduct the approach the same type of people and conduct the survey and collect the data regarding the consumption and income. So here the set of people whom we are going to approach, from whom we are collecting the data regarding consumption and income, it remains same. So that's why I said that panel data is time series of cross-section data. So we have to decide what type of data we want. That is for the researcher to decide the type of data that he is interested. Now, once we have this data, then we have to look at the data. Many times we have to carry out aggregation. That is, we are given the data and we have to find out the aggregate data. The aggregation may be over individuals, that is, we are given the data regarding the individual and we have to find the aggregate data, so we have to add that. The aggregation may be over time, that is, we are given data, say for example, for weeks, and from weeks data we have to obtain monthly data, or we are given the monthly data and from that we have to obtain the yearly data. So that is aggregation over time. Or aggregation may also be over space, that is, in the sense that we are given village data and from the village data we want to have the data regarding the district, or we are given the data regarding the district, from that we want to obtain the data regarding the state. So we have to carry out the aggregation if it is required. If it is not required, then there is no problem. Now in aggregation we have to be very careful, because in aggregation we should not compromise with basic nature of the data. Now next task is estimation of the model, and for that we have to find out a suitable econometric technique to estimate the model. Suitable econometric technique means whether we are going to use the tools available to estimate a single equation. That is, in this case, this is a single equation having only two variables. So we'll use the tool which are used to estimate this type of model, which is a single equation having only two variables. We call it this as two variable linear model. Or we have a multiple linear regression model, and then we use the tool accordingly. Or we may not have a single equation, we may have a simultaneous equation. And if we have simultaneous equation, then there are tools available for estimating simultaneous equation, and those tools may be utilized for carrying out our estimation. Then if it is a time series data, then there are a host of tools available for estimating this or tackling time series data and carrying out the estimation. So, for estimating the model, we have to find out which tool is going to be more suitable and more useful for estimating the model. And once we have estimated the model, then the next task is testing of hypothesis. You may ask, what is the need of testing of hypothesis and what are we trying to test? Actually, there are two types of studies that we conduct. One is a study regarding the population, that is called as census inquiry, where entire population is studied, no unit of the population is left. And another is sample inquiry. So, this population and sample, if you are conducting the study for the entire population, then perhaps testing may not be required because we are conducting for the entire population. This study is conducted for the entire population. Testing is more useful when we are conducting a sample study. Now, in the case of sample study, we are taking a sample from the population and this sample is being used for carrying out the estimation of the model, but we are getting the results on the basis of sample. We want to know that how far these results obtained from the sample are closer to the results from the population. The parameters of the populations, the characteristic of the population, we call them as parameters. And the statistic is called as characteristic of sample. So, we are getting sample statistic, and on the basis of that we are trying to estimate the population parameters. So, for example, suppose we have population mean, suppose we have the consumption of the people, and we can conduct a survey and find out the mean consumption of the people. That is possible. But suppose we do not want to conduct a census inquiry because of the cost, because of the time, or because of other factors, and we have drawn a sample from the population and estimated the mean. Now we want to know how close this sample mean is to the population means. So, this testing of hypothesis help us to know it, that is how close the sample estimates are to the population parameters are the parameters of the population. So, therefore, this testing of hypothesis is very, very important. Now, here the important thing is that we do not know what are these population parameters, and if you know the population parameters, then perhaps we will not carry out the estimation. There is no point in carrying out the study if we already know about the population parameters. So, without knowing the population parameters, without knowing this characteristic of the population, we conduct a sample inquiry, we carry out the estimation, and on the basis of these estimates, we try to find out that how closer we are to the population parameters or the actual values of the population parameters. And that is what we call as testing of hypothesis. Now, once we have tested the hypothesis, then we go for interpreting the results, that is drawing the inferences, that how can we draw the results. Now, here in the testing of hypothesis, there are a number of other things that are also involved, and I did not tell you about that. Let me tell you that as well, that in testing hypothesis, you know, there are three types of tests that we conduct. One test is that first of all, whatever estimates we have obtained, we test these estimates on the basis of the information available from economic theory regarding the sign and size of the parameters. That is, whether our estimates are in line with the information available from the relevant economic theory or concerned economic theory. So, that is what we call as we test the result using economic criteria. And then comes the statistical criteria, that is known as first order test. This testing of hypothesis is part of that first order test. That is what we call as first order test. Then after carrying out the statistical test, we go for econometric test, or we know that is use econometric criteria to evaluate the estimates. The estimates are evaluated using the econometric criteria because these estimates are based on certain assumptions. So, we want to know how far these assumptions are satisfied and how far these assumptions are correct. And on the basis of that, we try to find out that how much these estimates are reliable. That is, these econometric criteria is known as second order test. That is, the statistical test is first order test, econometric is second order test, and before that we go for economic test, that is using the economic criteria to test or to evaluate our estimates. Now, once we have carried these three types of tests and we have used these three types of criteria to evaluate the estimates of our model, then we go for drawing the inferences, that is interpreting the results. That is, how can we interpret these results? Now, if in case we find that the results that we have obtained are not in line with economic theory, or suppose our statistical test and econometric test suggest that these results are not reliable, and we see that the economic theory is saying something else and the results are something else. So, then we may, in the light of these results, we may reformulate our model. That is, we go again to this formulation of the model. It means we have committed some error, something is wrong. So, we again have a look at formulation of the model, specification of the model, and in the specification of the model, we have again to decide the variables which are going to be included in our model, which is going to be the dependent variable and what are going to be the independent variable, and what will be the form of the relationship. So, all these things we are going to relook and we are going to reformulate our model, and after reformulating the model, we again go for the data. If data is already collected, there is no problem, but if we have included some additional variable in the model, then we may need to collect data regarding that variable as well. Anyhow, if suppose the data is already collected, then we directly go for estimation of the model, and we can again carry out the same type of test that we told you, that is the using economic criteria, statistical criteria and econometric criteria. We again evaluate, and if these are in line with the relevant economic theory or the other studies, then it's okay. Otherwise, we have to accept the results and make our own interpretation regarding this. Now, once we have carried out the necessary analysis and we have interpreted the results and drawn the inferences in meaningful inferences, then comes the policy decision. On the basis of this, the policy decisions may be taken, forecasting may be carried out. That is, we may carry out the forecasting, that is, predict the future values of the variable given the values of independent variable.